A war which started with the attack by Hamas on Israel, with the global sympathy on Israel, which over 2 months has now shifted to a global sympathy for Palestine, not for Hamas, but for Palestine. How much that has changed? How are this group of fighters taking on one of the most powerful armies in the world? They are not even an armed force. They are a political organization having a military wing to achieve their political aims. Then if you look at this war, it's different from others. Hamas can lose every battle. They say in a war, what you have to do is to win the last battle. But in this case, Hamas can lose every battle, but they'll win the war. Israel can win every battle, but they can't win the war. Because public sympathy today throughout the world has moved to the Palestinian case. So even if every member of the Hamas organization is wiped out tomorrow, the cause will not die. The next generation is already there. And instead of being confined to a small area in the Middle East, it will be one that will be global. It gives me great pleasure to see that the numbers here, the students here, are not confined to Sri Lanka, but we have a number from other countries. As I had told the Secretary Defense and the Secretary Foreign Affairs, we should ensure that more and more places can be given out to officers who are not in the Sri Lankan forces, also to cadets who are not from Sri Lanka. Our three military academies, our Defense University, this college, and the Defense College all have the capacity to take in more. And the interaction of ideas, interactions of people are essential for this type of study. Because you are living in an age quite different from the time that the academies were started. The first was the Prussian Military Academy, and thereafter you found Clausewitz writing on war. These are completely different age, with very little which relates to that time. First and foremost, you are in a decade where very far-reaching revolutionary transformations are taking place in the armed force. That is the first impact that you will have. By end of this decade, you will find new methods, new strategies, new technologies, and a new geopolitical situation in which armed forces of each of your countries will have to operate. To begin with, in this decade and part of last decade, we are witnessing the rise of the armed forces of Asia for the first time. If you look at the armed forces of the West, other than that of the United States, you have in Asia armed forces better armed and capable of carrying out warfare. I was talking with some of the commanders the other day. The European armies barely carry 40 to 50, maybe 70 tanks that are workable tanks. Now if you look at the armor, if you look at the fact that many of them didn't even have the capacity or capability to supply Ukraine they were backing, you could see to what levels those armed forces have come down. On the other hand, China, India, Japan, the two Koreas, Pakistan have some of the best armed forces that are available now. Each of them carry a large stock of arms of all types. This is not to count the other countries. Many of the ASEAN countries, for instance, Bangladesh, also have armed forces of large numbers. So you are coming into an age where the armed forces are going to be larger than that of Europe. The area where Europe had an advantage is in the navies, but very soon, in the next decade or so, even that will change. So that is the first change you are meeting. Second is the revolutionary technological changes that are taking. All that is affecting you all. What is the soldier of the 21st century? I mean, we don't think 10 years ago that artificial intelligence would be available in this manner. In the next 10 years, how will you apply to civilian and military life? Look at all the other events that are coming. 3D printing. I mean, basically you can replace your parts if you take these machines with you, if it's there in your ships. So it's having a big impact, both in respect of the civil economy, the civil life, and also in regard to military life. Thirdly, climate change and phasing out of fossil fuels, or what they have agreed now, transition from fossil fuels. Now, how is it going to affect the armed forces and what you have? So just imagine the impact of climate change and the new technologies. How will communication technologies develop? What will be the fuel of the ships of the future and of airplanes of the future? You are getting to a technological age. We are looking at military activity in space and military activity under sea, not by submarines. but going really into the sea. So all these are different branches that are opening up, new spaces that is coming up. Against these big changes that are taking place, the revolutionary changes are taking place, you're on the other hand also facing insurgencies. Insurgents who are better armed and who have the technology that is today available. Why do insurgencies take place? Where do you go to confront it? How do you bring insurgency under control? Because with this, what is taking place now, will be a staff officer or in any other field, you will have to study not merely military strategy, but social issues, economic issues, political issues, and you will see how much nationalism, ethnic identities, religious identities play a role in warfare, as it had done thousands of years ago. Even now, that is sufficient to take place. You are finding wars of small areas, small wars having big consequences. One is Ukraine, the war that is taking place. How will that end? What will happen? Certainly, it will be a change Europe. But more than that, there is a war taking place now, which is going to have a big impact in our part of the world and outside. That is the war in Gaza. A war which started with an attack by Hamas on Israel, with the global sympathy on Israel, in which over 2 months has now shifted to a global sympathy for Palestine, not for Hamas, but for Palestinians. How much that has changed? How are this group of fighters taking on one of the most powerful armies in the world? They are not even an armed force. They are a political organization having a military wing to achieve their political aims. Then if you look at this war, it's different from others. Hamas can lose every battle. They say in a war, what you have to do is to win the last battle. But in this case, Hamas can lose every battle, but they'll win the war. Israel can win every battle, but they can't win the war. Because public sympathy today throughout the world has moved to the Palestinian case. So even if every member of the Hamas organization is wiped out tomorrow, the cause will not die. The next generation is already there. And instead of being confined to a small area in the Middle East, it will be one that will be global. We are seeing that impact in Europe. We are seeing that impact even in America, in the US, where its most prestigious education institutes are today split, whether it be MIT, whether it be Harvard, whether it be Penn State, or some of the others that are not mentioned. So this has been a political battle by an organization which was not military trained for this. It's a group of guerrillas, but they had planned a battle for this situation. They have put in an area very small, a few hundred square miles, 300 miles of tunnels. A new type of war. Okay, how do you fight that? I was listening yesterday to the Israeli defense minister saying, on one hand, the Gaza, that the Hamas is collapsing in Gaza. And I read today another article by the Ben Gurion Center, which says the fight is going on. So it's a political fight with a military content, and a fight that is being taken on. The global media fight, sympathy they have already conquered because of the killings of about 18,000 Palestinians. Israel had all the technology. These people had none. But could Israel use all the technology? They had Air Force, they used the Air Force. They bombed out the whole of Gaza, and Hamas has won. So this is a new type of war which we have to remember. Where is the battlefield? Not in Gaza. Into our living rooms, into our dining rooms, into our bedrooms. That is where the war is. This type of impact I had seen only long time ago in 1967-68, when the Tet Offensive was brought into the living rooms of the Americans, and a country that supported the Vietnam War turned the other way around. So all these are new instruments of war. Unfortunately, a lot of people are suffering. 2 million people have been uprooted. 18,000 are dead, mainly women and children. It's a big cost. It's a big cost to pay for it in my view. But it's a war of a different nature than any of us knew. Today morning I read, Hamas has said they are willing to recognize Israel. That is a political ploy. That again diffuses the Israeli attack on Hamas. But so you're witnessing a new type of war where politics have dominated the voice. They say war is an extension of politics. This seems to be politics have used war to gain its political aims in a way no one thought was possible. Because if you don't have a political solution acceptable to everyone, we are going to be dominated by this issue at least for the next decade. That we have to realize. It is not the governments of the Arab states or of the Muslim countries that will decide it. It is the people there. And it's not only going to be those who have Islam faith. Today, a large number of people in our part of the world and part in Europe, in Latin America, are of the same view. So finally you find a system where politics has come to an area where politics have used war for its own purposes. How it will end, I do not know. We are all watching it. But keep in mind that this decade is going to change the nature of war in a way which was not thought possible few years ago. That's all that advice I can give as civilian and as politician, having watched the international scene for a long time, seeing that how the geopolitics and the military warfare campaigns all getting merged into one. How it will go in the future, we can't say yet. It's up for you all to study how it will affect all of us, both in our military lives and our civilian lives.